How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, make sure to go down and subscribe. Today we're going to be installing a long anticipated modification for my Miata. I finally have mods for this car that we're going to be installing in this next couple of weeks to month here. First thing I'm going to start off with is a short shifter from Miata Roadster. It's a 4-inch shifter with a little bit of an angle to it. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. First things first, we need to get this hardtop off and examine the stock shifter, talk about the differences between the shifters, why I'm doing it, and kind of the premise behind this modification and what it entails. My Miata currently still apart. My carpet is taken out because I did a little bit of rust repair there. With the Miata, you can change the shifter just from the top. In order to gain access to that, you have to take the center console out. That right there is for a different video you guys will see next week. So I'm installing a short throw shifter. The shifter throw is supposedly shorter, but if you guys have seen the title of this video and what I talked about before, this shifter is 4 inches tall and it's on an angle, which means that the shifter throw is probably going to be a little bit longer than stock. And that's because of the height. The actual throw would be shorter if it wasn't taller. My Miata has probably been rebuilt at some point because it does click really nicely. It doesn't have too much play in the gears and whatnot. Some Miatas have this much play when they're in gear, but my shifter is actually pretty tight. But I wasn't the one who rebuilt it, and I don't know how long it's been or if it has ever been rebuilt, whatnot. This boot was all torn up before. I did replace it last year. So I'm gonna get this hardtop off, but let's go take a look at the new shifter, the new kit, everything that it has, what the install is gonna look like, and what the differences are between the stock and the new shifter, and whether it's worth buying or not, because it wasn't cheap. I haven't taken the hardtop off since the day I bought it, so this is going to be interesting. I think you need 2 people for this, but let's find out. I want to say that was easy, but that was like one of the most awkward things I've ever done. Let's take a look at what we have in this box. We'll look at this last. So the shifter kit comes with all the hardware you see here, all the tubing, all the little bolts, all the little pieces. Has pretty much everything we need right here for a shifter rebuild kit and anything we need to replace all the stuff. It has extra insulation for the heat, which we won't be installing today most likely because my center console is still taken apart. We have heat shielding, and then we have the little plate here that I actually already have a new one of. Then we have all of the instructions with everything that we need right here. And then lastly, the main part of all of this, in this bag here, we have the shifter. You can see here that it is significantly taller than factory, and it has a little bend in it. This bend is actually going to be facing the driver, so this ends up being a little bit closer to the driver. So normally this shifter would be like right here. There's an extra couple of inches. Being bent towards you means that it is closer to the steering wheel. So that means you can have your hand on the shifter to shift the gears faster. This shifter, however, is custom, and let me tell you why. So Bill from Miata Roadster, I reached out to him and I said, hey, I kind of am debating between going straight or going with a slight bend, because they sell them straight or bent a little bit more. They also sell shorter versions, but I wanted the extension because I had seen a couple of people rocking these, and I just really wanted it for myself because it just seemed to add to the driving experience. Going back to on why this is custom, this is actually half bend. So usually the bend is a little bit more significant, making it a little closer to the driver. I wasn't sure if I wanted the full bend, and then I was like, I might as well go with the straight option. Then I read on the forums that someone had custom ordered a half bend. So I emailed Bill right away. He reached back to me and he's like, yep, that's something I can definitely do. That being said, we need to get all of the old stuff out and put the new stuff in and see how it feels. One quick little note, if you have an NA Miata or a Miata with a 5-speed, the 5-speed Miata has oil in the turret. So basically when you take the shifter out, there's a turret there with transmission oil. That's something that you need to change out every 60,000 miles or so, or pretty much whenever you do a transmission oil change. Now you can either change it from the top, and you can extract the oil from the top with like a turkey baster or a soap pump or something, or you can drop it from the bottom of the transmission. It's easier to do it from the top if you're not doing transmission oil, but I don't know how old my transmission oil is, and I need a clutch, so I'm not going to be doing new turret oil today. While the transmission is out, I'm going to change the transmission oil and the turret oil at the same time, so that's why I'm not doing it in today's video. In case the e-brake so the car doesn't roll back, my e-brake doesn't work, so I've chopped up the rear wheels. Next step is to put the car into neutral. But if you still have your center console, take your shift knob off and unscrew all of the screws that I told you to. One's here, 2 are here, and one on each side right here. Once that is off, we need to take this little boot off. So these 4 bolts right here, 10mm, and simply just take all 4 out. With this, you can just leave it to the side, or you can disconnect it if you really want to. This rubber piece here is going to be a hard piece to get out. Most of the time, your guys' things are going to be all torn up, so you can just simply just yank this out. But you got to get a little tricky and do a little bit of slipping, and it should come right out. Now that we have the shifter exposed, there's 3 bolts, and we can simply just remove the shifter after all 3 of these bolts are taken out. These shouldn't be too tight. They should be pretty easy to just take out. Just be careful with them because you don't want to strip them, but it is also still a 10mm. Also, try not to lose any of the bolts. I just lost one. And just like that, we have the last one, and we should just be able to take this out like so. I was able to secure the bolt because it simply just falls right through. Now we can lift this, and like you can see, there is the turret oil right there. Coming and seeing, you can see it dripping a little bit, and you can see inside the turret there is the oil there. But like I said, that's something you should replace if you haven't replaced it. So here we have the 2 different shifters. So first things first, we can see here how much longer it is. It's about this much longer if it was straight. It's what? It's supposed to be 4 inches of an extension compared to the original. The shift knob makes it a lot taller. The shift knob makes it like that much taller, but install the shift knob on this one, and they're just about the same height. There's probably like an extra like inch. Now for the main difference, we're looking at the differences underneath the shifter that goes into the turret. So as you can see here, this one is about that big. And the short throw shifter, in order to make a shorter throw, it moves the fulcrum. So because that point is further down, the shifter can be shorter and more concise. But because the shifter is taller on the top, it makes the throw just a little bit bigger because of the size difference. So the next step is to take this little washer out. There's 3 pieces in here. There should be a lower fulcrum bushing, a wave spring, and the tip bushing here. So I need to just figure out a way to squeeze this out. So reaching in, there's these 3 bushings that have to come out. Put these on the side, and I believe now we are ready to install the new ones. Ensure on the bottom of the original shifter that this piece is taken out. Otherwise, you need to make sure and reach all the way down into there to make sure you take it out. But now what you can do is simply just come in and put this new piece in. So after placing the tip in, we need to put the 2 bushing in and put a little bit of grease on it, just conservative amount. That should probably be enough. Maybe I'll put a little bit more. Simply just apply a little bit around the edging. So we're gonna face this down. The NA only has 1 little dowel pin there. You're only supposed to apply it to the outside. I got a little on the inside and I did clean it up. So we're gonna push it in just like so, and make sure we get it seated in there. Make sure to get it pretty good in there because you have to put a washer above it. What you're gonna do is orient this little notch with the dowel pin. So you can see the pin right there. Depending on what generation you have, like I said before, you'll either have 1 or 2. My car is an NA, so I only have 1, but just like that, you line it up with the pins facing the notches front and back almost. Now comes the paper gasket, which is attached to the fulcrum offset ring. So these 3 holes are gonna line up with these 3 holes right here, but also the dowels in here have to line up with these 2 here and the dowel that is in the turret itself. So just like this, it might take a couple of rotations. You're gonna go right here, and as you can see, the dowel is aligned with the dowel and aligned with the notch in this little ring here. So before we actually put the shifter in, we need to make sure a couple of things. Number 1, that these align here and align on both sides. Number 2, that the wave washer is clipped in on all 3 sides. And number 3, we need to make sure that this is oriented the right way. So what I am going to do is kind of just line it up. This should be facing towards you at a 9 o'clock, and obviously if you have a right-hand drive car, you just face it at 3 o'clock. Just get the bottom of this covered, and now we're ready to install. And now we're just slowly gonna lower it, make sure it's going straight in to the bottom washer there, and just like so, it is in. So now we're ready to bolt it down. You got these like wavy washers that are gonna help compress it. Go like this, and we're gonna hand tighten them first. and we're gonna hand tighten all 3 of them. So now that they're basically hand tight, not super tight, we're gonna turn them each 1/4 of a turn. The reason why you don't wanna go too hard is because if you tighten it down too much, you won't be able to shift. So you're gonna come right here and just 1/4 turn. Same with this right here, and same with this one right here. Now, before we put anything back, we want to make sure it shifts. And that is so nice and crispy. So we can roll through all of the gears without any problems, which means that we're all done. Next step is to put the heat shielding this side down, shiny side down, just like that. The next step is going to be to put this piece back on. Now, do I go with the new one or the old one? I think I'm gonna go with the new one, even though it does look a little scuffed up. Obviously, the looks do not matter because it's all about the functionality of it. Now, because this kit has everything, it has the replacement parts with the washers that we can just put down. And just like that, we have them all in. Like I said, this bolt is stripped. That will be addressed when I drop the trans. But for now, take a look at that new shifter. So the next step from here, if this was a permanent solution for you, I have a lot to put back in my interior. You take this reusable zip tie and put it around here where the white collar was on my old one. From there, just for demonstrational purposes, you would put the heat shielding on like so and kind of have it tucked in like this. Then you put the shift boot support tube just right on top of this, and it would look something like this. That tube is there so the shift boot sits a little bit higher. My car's a long way to go in terms of getting put back together for the interior, so I'm gonna take everything out and have it kind of how I was driving the car. The last step of this says enjoy your Miata, so let's go out and do exactly that. First drive with the new short throw. It's very interesting because before you could just like lazily shift from here, but now you gotta move your arm, which is going to be fine because my center console is going to go back in, so it's gonna sit about this much higher or so, but it looks so good. And see how close it is to the steering wheel? You can touch the wheel and the shift knob at the same time. First impressions here, the throw feels a little more concise and a little less sloppy even than my shifter was, and my shifter was pretty good. Just quickly blipping the throttle here and just switching gears. It's just so much more easier and effortless to throw it into gears. I don't feel myself like wanting to miss gears or anything like that. You know exactly where it's being positioned and exactly what gear you're going into. It is gonna take some getting used to the shifter not being so low and just being right here. First impressions, I really like it. Like going to second gear, effortless. As far as do I feel a difference in the throw because this throw is a little bit longer, I don't. Honestly, it feels shorter even though I know it isn't, but it doesn't feel like super long or anything like that. It has a really nice just OEM feel. It doesn't feel super short. It doesn't feel way too long. I mean, that's the throw right there. It's not massive, and I think it's still a short throw. It's not increasing your throw like crazy, but it isn't shortening it up like crazy. Sometimes a shorter throw can actually negate the effect you want because the whole idea is to be able to put it into gears more efficiently and faster. And sometimes a shorter throw makes it harder to put into gears, but the throw on this shifter just makes it feel like you know exactly where it's going. I think this was definitely money well spent here. And just like that, we're back from our little drive. Very short driving impression. I just wanted to make sure everything was in place really fast. Obviously, the clutch in this car needs to be replaced, which is going to be done as soon as I possibly can get underneath the car. But when this short throw is going to be paired up with a couple of different interior mods, a new clutch, it is going to be perfect. This was 100% money well spent here. It's definitely going to take a little time to getting used to. I'll continue to update you guys with the thoughts as time goes on, so make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of those. As far as first impressions go, like I was saying in the car, if you could hear me, it just feels like a very OEM shift, but just that much more crisp and easier to place. I've always seen cars with taller shifters in them, and I've always wanted to try it out, and now I finally have one in my own car, and I really like it. And I think on the track and on autocrosses, when we do take this car on some of those things, because that's what I bought it for, that's when I'm really gonna notice the biggest difference. We have a little bit of ways to go with the interior still. Next video is probably gonna be me putting it back together, and we need to do something about that steering wheel, if you know what I'm talking about, and I think I've said too much. But that's all I've got, so I'll see you guys in the next video.